Hi, Mr. John. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
So could you tell us a little about how you got into the Army?
Okay, I'll give you a little bit of my background as a person and what I do today, and then I'll go into that question if that's okay with you, okay?
Okay.
Sure.
I'm 64 years old. I just had my birthday back in October. I was born in Philadelphia, graduated from college in a suburb of Philadelphia. I was drafted and knew I was going into Vietnam because that's when they still had the draft. And I wanted to go down to Jersey seashore and party before I had to go into the Army and get killed. So I went in willingly in the fall, went through, I think it was about 2 months of basic training, which is, I had fun. I was in good shape, I was a good athlete. I lifted weights when I was a kid and stuff, so basic training for me was pretty easy except for getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which I didn't like to do.
Yeah.
After that, I had another 2 months of advanced infantry training, which was more playing war.
Yeah.
It was less calisthenics, push-ups, and all those obstacle course stuff. And I will tell you that a little story that it's not easy. And by the way, when they cut all your hair off, it's the most effective thing that you can ever imagine. Because if you see somebody, at least back then, if not now, with a haircut, you typecast them.
Yeah.
When everybody is bald, you have no idea whether this guy was Elvis Presley, whether he was a skinhead, whether he was a geek, a nerd, or a brain, or whatever the terms are these days. When everybody's got their hair cut off, everybody's even and equal.
Yeah.
They don't do it anymore, apparently.
Right.
So anyway, got through advanced infantry training, and when I was finished that, I was one of 4 or 5 college graduates, and all of us received orders to go to Germany on some special assignment rather than Vietnam, and that was something to celebrate. And coincidentally, due to the challenge of a drill sergeant, I picked up my wall locker full of equipment, 200 pounds,
Wow.
and I got a hernia. And I had to go into the hospital and have it fixed. After that operation, you got a 10-day leave, I think, convalescent leave. Since I was going to Germany, I proposed marriage to my girlfriend I met down the Jersey seashore, and we got married while I was on convalescent leave. We had wonderful plans about going to Germany and seeing Europe and all this kind of thing. When I got back to the Army camp, my orders for Germany were canceled. And I was heading to Vietnam via intense combat training in Colorado. So now I'm married, and I would never have gotten married if I knew I was heading to Vietnam. It's not fair.
Right.
But so I spent 5 or 6 months in Colorado, intensive combat training, and everything about that was real except the bullets. And it got old very quickly because I don't mind playing Army when there's an enemy out there, but it gets old playing Army when there is no enemy. You're just practicing. And quickly, an incident I mentioned to you guys earlier that my promotions were canceled. I had a platoon sergeant who was not high on the IQ list, and we had been training for 3 or 4 months straight. My wife came out for 2 weeks and stayed in an old Travelodge motel doing laundry and making beds at the hotel to try to afford the cost of the hotel. I was stealing sea rations and giving them to her to eat because we had no money. So anyway, we get this overnight pass, and we're all excited. The single guys want to go to town and party, and the married guys have wives coming in, the whole bit. And this sergeant comes into the barracks and stands up on a box because he was short, and he said, "I'm canceling the leave tonight, or pass." Everybody looks at each other, what the heck's this? And he said, "I know now that you don't respect your mother and father because of this. And it was a cigarette butt that he found somewhere. Well, that flicked my switch. And I went, and I was, you would have said, hey, Jeff John's pretty straight, good soldier, everything, you know, expert marksman, shoes are polished. I mean, I know what I'm doing. I lost it. And I ran up the middle of that barracks. If I got a hold of him, I would have ripped his arm off. But an E6 tackled me. And the E6 I respected more than anybody ever met in the Army. He tackled me and held me. And I was on the ground with my fingernails scraping the bottom of the barracks because I was about 3 inches away from this platoon sergeant E7's boot. When we got to Vietnam, he turned out to be a coward. The first firefight, he hid and refused to go out on any more missions. And then the word got out that if he did come out, going to get fragged. And frag means shot by your own men. Because in Vietnam or in the police department, you got to depend on somebody to cover your back. If they're a coward, you don't want them around. And this guy put us through all this crap and junk for 5 or 6 months and turns out to be a coward. Thank you very much. So because of that incident, he canceled my promotions all the way through a third of Vietnam. Somehow he called some of his buddies and got, you know, removed from Vietnam, out of country, and they kicked me right up to E5, which is a hard striped sergeant team leader. And before I became an E5, I carried an M60 machine gun in Vietnam. An M60 machine gun puts out more firepower than anything else a light infantry platoon can put out. You know, and you have the belt coming out of it just like you see in the movies and stuff like that. And the first firefight that we were in Vietnam, and I was too reckless. I'm probably lucky I'm sitting here today, okay? But I didn't even go on the ground. I just stood there. And just like you see in the movies, like a dope, you know, shooting up the bush and everything. And I told you that, you know, they found a guy, a Viet Cong that looked like a piece of Swiss cheese. The lieutenant that we had, the first one of them, was very young, right out OCS, and he loved me because he sat there behind some bush or something watching me play hero, a dumb hero, and he loved me after that. So he kicked me all the way up to E5, and they took my M60 away from me, gave me an M16, which is a light rifle, and I had 2 or 3 guys under me, and I was a team leader.
Well, we know that you earned a Purple Heart. Could you maybe tell us something about that?
Yeah, those of us in Vietnam in the infantry would pray for the $1 million wound,
Right.
which was a wound that was bad enough to get you out of Vietnam, but not bad enough to make you handicapped for the rest of your life. And anyway, in Vietnam, the lieutenants that were your platoon leaders would be in the field for 6 months, and then they would go back into the back in the base camps, and then they would bring in another lieutenant to take the next 6 months. The typical tour in Vietnam for a grunt like us was 1 year. So we had 1 year, lieutenants had 6 months. The first lieutenant they brought in, as I said, he loved me because of, you know, our experiences in combat and stuff. When he left, the second guy they brought in was not a good guy. And it was because of him that there's 1 man dead and 1 man without a leg, and myself and another fellow who got medevaced out. I went through 9 hospitals before I ended up at Valley Forge Hospital in outside of Philadelphia. So that lieutenant thought he was a hero, and he was far from it.
Yeah.
But he, despite our objection, refused to listen to us and made us go on top of a small mountain in the middle of a valley right near the DMZ. You could see the DMZ from where we were. You could, Nolan Ryan could have probably thrown a hardball and from where we are and hit the DMZ with it. That's how close we were. And he wanted to set an ambush up on the top of that hill, and we told him, Lieutenant, don't want to do it on top of there. That's the best vantage point. No, it isn't. It's booby-trapped. Don't worry about it. We'll check it out. So there's people dead and handicapped and wounded today because of his stupid judgment. And as I found out later on, that lieutenant was fragged by his own men. And I was told that he had over 100 M16 bullets in him. Wow. Now, to have over 100 bullets in you, if there's 20 rounds in a magazine, then there's at least 6 people firing in there. Right. So it wasn't one guy that went nuts. There was a committee that was not happy with his protection of lives and his leadership. And I have to believe that a lot of that probably goes on in every war. And that's why you don't go to war unless it's absolutely necessary. Yeah. Because you're going to have stuff. I mean, I tell you a couple stories, multiply it to what, 1 million people go to Vietnam, whatever the number was. Right. So, any other questions about the, horror story? We took our turn being point man. When you go on a mission, there's one guy in front. And if anybody's going to get killed, it's him. Either step on a booby trap or get shot. So you take your turn. Your turn for point today. When you're a team leader, as soon as you get some authority position, you're not on point anymore, but your team is on point. So you take turns on the team, and I decide whose turn it is to be the first guy. My guys did not want to go down into a hole, and I had to go because I'm the leader, so I got to go down there. And I'm down there with a flashlight, and I climb down there. And in Vietnam, I don't know how the ground in Vietnam ever stayed stationary because there were so many tunnels in that country. I go down there and I turn that flashlight on, and there's a gook down there, and he has a hole in his forehead, dead center like this. And I would say it was probably 1.5 inches in diameter, which probably means it might have been a 50 caliber, right. The big gun that's on top of a tank that you see in the movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, those, the 50 caliber diameter is probably about like that. That's probably what made that hole. And see, for me, you expect to see that, but what I didn't expect to see was a cockroach crawl out of the hole in that guy's forehead. My. That cockroach was 4 times as big as a typical palmetto bug in Florida.
That's bad.
All animals and insects in Vietnam, because I guess it's perfect environment for them, right. They're all bigger than normal. I mentioned to you earlier a scorpion that was the size of a 1.25 pound lobster. And scorpions are only supposed to be about this long. That cockroach crawled out of that hole in that guy's forehead, and I thought I was going to vomit. But you suck it up and drag him out of there. Right. So I mentioned also before, and everybody's different. I had, I don't have a lot of fears or anything like that. Okay, the only thing I fear is going to hell. I want to go to heaven. But I don't fear much when it comes to man and the world. But so for me, the stuff about Vietnam that was unpleasant was the living conditions. Right. We were in the field all the time. My base camp was Quang Tri, and it wasn't much of a base camp, and it was overrun when the Tet Offensive came. Yeah. So, I mean, you wouldn't even call it a base camp, really. To me, that was, you know, Jersey seashore. I mean, I was in the field all the time. I don't know why, because you're not supposed to be, but we were always in the field. So one night we were on ambush. My team went out there at night during the monsoon season. Continuous rain. We got our ponchos on and stuff before the sun went down, and we're sitting there all night long, and you can't move very much because the ponchos make too much noise. So we're sitting around, and at first I thought it was a raindrop that got inside of my poncho cover and was dripping down my neck. But 4 hours later, I figured this isn't a raindrop. And it slowly made its way down the center of my back, and then made its way into the top of the crack in my rear end, and then made its way through the space between the cheeks of your butt, and then it started going into the hole, okay? And I'm sitting there, God, please send the sun. When that sun comes up, and I told Mudrick, one of my team, I said, Mudrick, we buddies? Yeah, John. Do anything for me? Anything, John. I said, when the sun comes up, I'm pulling my pants down, and you're going to have to get a leech out of my butt. Okay, John. There was 2 ways to get leeches off of you, either mosquito repellent, the chemical, or touching a lit cigarette butt to the leech, and it would release. If you pick it off, it leaves its head in there and gets infected.
Which one did you decide?
Mudrick used a cigarette butt.
Why?
He liked to smoke. When the sun came up, you light him up. You know, you can't do it at dark because you can see it a mile away other than the rain. And he touched that cigarette to that leech, and it dropped out of my rear end. So, not fun.
No.
The leeches over there, some of them were typical leeches that are black, maybe about this long, and maybe a little bit skinnier than my little finger, but some of them are huge. And we were on another mission. We're walking through this small river and stuff, and all the way up to our necks, come out of there, and we got leeches all over the place. And these things, and I don't exaggerate, these things are about this long and as thick as my thumb on your face and all over your body. You got to strip down, find out where they are, light up the cigarette butts, get the mosquito repellent, whatever you got, and all these leeches are falling on the ground. So, and I went camping and fishing when I was a kid. I loved camping and outdoors, but picking leeches out of your rear end, not fun.
That's
Another time, I had a mini mutiny on my hands, my team again. We were set up a camp, and we're guarding the perimeter. We're dig our foxholes, and we're in there, and we're in 2 in a hole. And it's monsoon season again, and in Vietnam, during the day, it's very hot. And you're sweating all the time. It's like South Florida, maybe down in the Everglades, okay? At night, it gets cold, okay? And we're in there trying, and we were done some mission, didn't even get a shower, call us up again, half of our equipment, we're back out on another mission, and we're back out there in the monsoon season, and we are freezing to death. And the 2 of us in each hole would lean our backs against each other to try to stay warm. And you have to wear your helmet because you're on the line, and underneath the helmet that comes out like this, there's a little bit of dry space. There's 2 things that like that dry space: your face and 1,000 gnats and mosquitoes. And they're there flying around your face all night long. It was torture. And my guys are going nuts. And they said, John, we're telling you, sun comes up, we're out of here. We're going back to camp. So you don't even know where camp is. I don't care. We're getting out of here. The thing that ticked them off was that day, a chopper comes in and everybody's going, hey, we're going to get some food. Give us some clothing, you know, give us some fatigue shirts. We're all in T-shirts because we were around the little camp there, you know, relaxing. And the chopper comes in, and guess what the chopper drops off?
No idea.
A box of cigars
Oh, wow.
for the company commander. My guys see that. That was not a popular event. And by the way, that company commander today is in a U.S. Army mental institution. And a couple of my buddies told me, and I said, you know, I'm sorry to say it, I try to be a Christian. I'd have to pray to feel sorry for him. Because he might be getting what he's due.
Right.
One of these guys that, you know, you ever see one of those Army movies where that crazy guy comes out in a cavalry hat, walking through mortars coming in and everything else, and he wants to go surfing? You guys ever saw that movie? It's a Vietnam movie. Okay, that guy, in an exaggerated fashion, reminds me of my company commander. So if you're going to be a big hero and, you know, enjoy shooting and killing people, what are you doing in a mental institution?
Right.
I guess it was a game for you or something.
Right.
So like he
Or
likes
maybe
shooting them
it
too
caught
much?
up to him. Maybe he did some things in addition to just defending himself. And maybe that came around, you know, what goes around comes around.
Right.
I don't know why he's in there, but
He just kind of enjoyed himself a little too much.
maybe.
That's sad.
So you
The
also.
thing is, that you're going to enjoy yourself, come out in the bush with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't sit back smoking cigars.
Right.
No.
So you also told us about this mission where you were on the hill, and we were getting towards the Purple Heart, and then we started talking about the
Okay.
leeches.
So anyway, the
Okay.
lieutenant makes us go up to the top of this hill.
Right.
And typically when you set up a defensive position or an ambush position, the M60 machine gun teams set up fields of fire all across the top of the hill to protect your position and also fire on whatever comes by. So my teams, and I'm not carrying the M60 anymore, I got one of my team guys carrying, humping this thing all around the place, it's heavy. Anyway, one of the other M60 machine gun teams is clearing a field of fire, and the medic that we had in our platoon helped that machine gun team clear a field. In other words, you know, everything grows just like the Everglades in Florida grows 3 inches a day, that type of thing. So you have to cut all this stuff down so you can see, you know, what's below you and what's coming at you. And the medics, whose job was not to help people clear a field of fire, helped his buddy that was in his team. And he set off a booby trap because he wasn't really trained to look for that type of stuff. He was trained to put bandages on people. And he got blown away, disappeared.
Right.
E6 lost his leg. An E4 and I was an E5. We got shrapnel in our backs and legs and stuff, and we were medevaced out. And I went through 9 hospitals, including Valley Forge, which is where I finally ETS'd out of. The lieutenant that came in for the second half of the year, the fellow who forced us to, didn't listen to us and made us set up the thing, almost got fragged. The medic's friend was not happy with it losing and watching his friend get blown up, to say the least. And he went walking towards the lieutenant with his M16, pulling on the trigger constantly, and it wouldn't go off because he left the safety on. Fortunately for him, and the lieutenant survived that particular incident. However, I got word that later on, that lieutenant was made a captain, and there was a lot of promotions in the field because so many people were dying.
Right.
He became a captain, company commander, and I was told that he was found dead with slightly over 100 M16 bullets in him,
Right.
which means probably that he was fragged by his own men. So apparently he still didn't learn real quickly and was probably responsible for more unnecessary American deaths. So sometimes, I guess, I'm not sure I could have done it, but sometimes you have to eliminate something that's causing more deaths than your own.
Right.
and that's war.
Did you have any friends from the, like, being in the service? Do you still have people that you know, or?
What's interesting is that, and it's common in Vietnam apparently because there were so many people dying and getting wounded, and there was so much of a rotation of substitute infantrymen and stuff that you often lost touch with everybody. One of my best friends in the service, I won't tell you what country he's from, but he came from a wealthy family, and we used to sit there and try to figure out how to shoot each other so we could get home. And we could never figure it out because we were afraid that the person who pulled the trigger first, the other person that was wounded, wouldn't have enough control to point the gun accurately and shoot the other guy so we both could get out of there. And we used to laugh about that. Well, he was reading his mail one day, and he had a big white smile. And he said, "John, I'm going home." I said, "I'm not shooting you." I almost said his name. "I'm not shooting you. We can't have it figured out." You know, my family found a doctor, and the doctor's going to say that my wife is pregnant and seriously ill, and they have to give me leave, and I ain't coming back. And that's exactly what happened. They pulled him out of the field, and he never came back again.
Did he just not want to be there? Like, he just wanted to be home with his family? I don't blame him.
So that's one of my buddies. And when I got back home, I was so busy, you know, trying to make a living and raising little kids and stuff like that. I know where he told me to come, and I may just go there next year because I've fully retired. I may try to dig him up. The thing is, he told me, and he said, "You come down there and you look for my family's business, and you tell them who you are, and I'll find you." So another fellow that I was in Vietnam with was a APC driver, an armored personnel carrier driver. He wasn't in the field very much. He was babysitting his armored vehicle, and he was a driver for the captain and all this kind of thing. He was lucky. But, and you'll be interested to hear this. I didn't tell you this before. Call him Willie. Willie lives in Jacksonville today. Willie got off the airplane from Vietnam after doing his year, and he was still in fatigues. And back then, there were so many guys traveling, they were using commercial airlines, not just Army planes. He gets off a commercial flight and walks into the airport, and somebody spit on him because of the anti-Vietnam thing going on back then. If that happened to me, and I told him this, you never know until you're there, but I can tell you pretty assuredly, if I was able to walk off an airplane, I came back on a stretcher, and somebody spit on me, I'd be in prison, because I would have ripped that guy's arm off and beat him to death with his own arm. When you come back from combat, okay, you don't want any monkey business. Yeah. This guy doesn't even know, okay? You're insulting every person that I went to Vietnam with, and the enemy, in essence, but insulting my friends and wounded and dead guys, I'll beat the tar out of you. Yeah. So he flipped. He's on full disability. So he has a couple dogs and married and divorced and married again to the same woman. Screws you up. So I stay in touch with him. I went up to Rolling Thunder in Washington, D.C. with the motorcycles and stuff. I have a couple motorcycles, and I was up there, and I called Willie, and we cried together. Told him I loved him, and I appreciated what he did and stuff like that. So there's some other guys. There was a guy from Georgia who was computer literate, and he And this is after 30 years, 25 to 30 years. He started searching on the internet, and he's found 5 or 6 of us. They've had a couple little reunions, which I've not been able to attend because I got grandchildren and I got 3 daughters,
Right.
and my family comes before that stuff.
Right.
But I will get together with those guys. And he's been able to determine who didn't make it
Yeah.
to a degree. I've been to the moving wall, I've been to the real wall in Washington, D.C. once, and the moving wall, and there's 10 or 12 of them that are all around the United States. They're miniature versions, but they have all of the 58,000 names on them. And I've been to the moving wall 4 or 5 times. The first 3 times, very difficult for me.
Right.
The first time I cried for 2.5 hours, leaning against a tree. So when the moving wall came to Florida, I helped sponsor it, and we set it up out in Sebring, and there was a young fella and I who carried the panels for the right side of the wall. And this young fella cried, wept twice one on each panel, on one time on 2 different panels, because his relatives were on each of those 2 panels. So I hugged him and said, I know, you know. I will tell you, at my second visit to the moving wall, in fact, it was the one I just told you about that we set up. I went home and brought my wife back the next day from Palm Beach Gardens to Sebring. And they set up little benches that you can sit on in front of the wall and reflect. And I'm sitting there with my wife, and I said, Nancy, you know, it's not just these 58,000 guys and gals that lost their lives, because they're dead, and hopefully they're in heaven. It's the millions of their family members
Right.
that are still living today with the memory of their lost husband,
Right.
father, son, brother, uncle, nephew, millions of people like that. So it's their sacrifices too. And that made me sad again, obviously. And then something occurred to me that got me very angry. What it was? After reflecting again on millions of people's and their sacrifices, I said, Nance, you know something? The President of the United States of America, Bill Clinton, couldn't even keep his zipper up for this country. And these people died, and their families weep today. That's pretty disgusting, isn't it?
It is.
And I'll tell you what. I may lose control if I ever have that man in my space. Think about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, and he's done other things, you know,
Yeah.
pardoning convicted drug traffickers as President of the United States. I'm confused. So anyway, you know what's good though? Back then, and again, see, I went through 9 hospitals, so, and I'm in the bush all the time. I have very little understanding of the anti-war thing that's going on. And because I was in these hospitals, you know, you don't get it either. So, oh, here's on the lighter side of things, I'm in Valley Forge, and my buddies, I grew up in West Philadelphia. My buddies from my old neighborhood came to Valley Forge Hospital to visit me. And they walk in the room, and their hair is down to around the middle or bottom area of their ears, okay? When I left for the service, people had haircuts that were shorter than what I have now. And long hair represented to me hippies and war demonstrators who didn't understand. They just peace, love, and, you know, pass me a marijuana, okay? So the guys walk in, and I said, "You guys hippies?" "No, Jeff, what are you talking about? This is," I said, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Look at your hair, it's so long." This is the way hairdos are now. So after that, you know, it was great.
Yeah.
Oh, another story. Valley Forge Hospital. I'm sitting in the cafeteria, and I'm about to get out of the service now because my wounds have healed. I'm able to walk and stuff like that. And in the cafeteria, they would march in the guys who were wacko. And you would know who they were, not just because they were in a line, but they had double pajama suits on. In other words, they had regular pajamas and another set of pajamas on top of it. One's long sleeve, one's short, so you knew, and even if they ran down the hallway or something by themselves trying to escape or something, everyone knew that they were wacko.
Right.
And I'm sitting there eating my lunch with somebody else, and I look over, say, "Hey, the guys are coming in again, man. I hope these guys are not permanently messed up, you know?" And there, in line, is a guy I went to college with. I looked again and leaned over, and I said, "Man, that's Andy Law." And he doesn't see me, he's marching in line. So they stop in line to get their food, and I walk up, and, you know, I have no idea how Andy's going to behave, react, recognize me. And I walked up to him, and I just whispered in his ear from rear. I said, "Andy, is that you?" And he turned around, he said, "Jeff, how you doing, buddy?" And I said, "Are you all right?" And he said, "Yeah, I just got my brain scrambled. An artillery shell came in and, you know, very close to me and rang my bell, but I'm doing okay." I said, "Thank goodness." So it was good to see him there and, you know, shoot the breeze and everything. In fact, I saw him at our college homecoming 2 years ago, and he gave me an American Legion shirt that he knew. He and I knew we were going to see each other, so he belongs to an American Legion in New Jersey, North Jersey somewhere, and he brought me a shirt. So, and I mean, that was almost 40 years ago,
right.
69, almost 40 years ago. So that's another friend. I have another buddy who, he was a fraternity brother. We called him Truck because he was so clumsy. He was very tall and gangly. You know, he'd walk down an aisle and he'd be knocking stuff over with his arms and not even know it, so we called him Truck. Yeah. And Truck went to Vietnam. He was a chopper pilot. And he survived. He ended up in the Secret Service. He, back in the 70s, he guarded Gerald Ford's family. Then he went into the Customs Department in South Florida and flew choppers chasing drug traffickers. But he's retired, and he lives, he has a home in North Carolina and a home up in Vermont. So
were you glad that you you served? Would you know, even knowing that the outcome of the war and how it ended, weren't you?
Well, you mentioned the outcome of the war, okay? And remember we were talking earlier about the
Right.
truth seems to be disappearing all over the place?
Right.
I don't care about the issue of the end of the war, but there's huge evidence that we actually won that war because officers in the North Vietnamese army have come forward and said we were defeated.
Yeah.
In paraphrasing, we had no bullets left. We were done. And mysteriously, we pulled out. Mysteriously, throughout all the war, we weren't allowed to fight the war the way wars normally are fought. We had to stay out of here and walk around here, you know, and everybody's going, why?
Right.
Never get the answer. If you check history and you could somehow find out the truth, you would find out probably that 98% of every war that's ever been fought since the history of man has been a couple people wanting what somebody else had. And they don't do it, but they get us to go and get it for it.
Yeah.
So my suggestion, and everybody has criticisms for everything, but very few suggestions. I got what I think is very effective suggestions. Every senator that votes for the next war, at least one of their sons has to go into the service. And I don't mean counting tissues in a supply factory somewhere. Has to be in the infantry front line, no officer, no nothing. Here, you want an M60 machine gun? Want an M79 grenade launcher? You want an M16? Or do you want some stones like David threw? But you're in the front line. Let's see how many of them vote for it. Yeah. I've read accounts where throughout the entire, and they may not be true. Right. No one can find any direct son of any senator that served in the infantry in Vietnam. That's an amazing coincidence, isn't it? Isn't that a coincidence? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, if you guys are going to vote for war and send me over there to fight for some reason that people can't seem to find a clear explanation of, your son's going with me. And I'll bet you they'll do a little bit better job in determining whether this war is necessary.
Right.
But am I proud of it? Absolutely. I've had untold, I've just had a fellow the other day at the golf course with both artificial legs, never served in the service. And he was apologizing to me for not serving because he was eligible during the Vietnam era. I've had a lot of guys tell me that. They regret that they either found a way to dodge the bullet or were not physically able to serve, okay? Right. So those of us that did serve, to my knowledge, are very proud that we did. And whether we won, we lost, or nobody won or lost, the point is that you served your country, served it well, and came back here, and there weren't too many thank yous. Especially Vietnam. It's changing. I've been up to Bike Week up in Daytona Beach. You know, I haven't been there in quite a while, but I used to go up every year. Mm-hmm. Young guys who you might, or I might call a yuppie. They look like they got a few extra dollars. Come up and say, "Sir, excuse me," because I was in the Nam Night Motorcycle Club, okay, which is Vietnam veterans and police officers. So I had my colors on, and they knew that I was in Vietnam, or assumed it. Okay, and they'd come up and say, "Sir, excuse me, just wanted to thank you for serving." So I got more thank yous in the last 3 or 4 years here than I got in 30 years after I came back home from Vietnam.
How did you?
And you know, a person goes over there at the insistence of the government and comes back and they spit on him. I don't understand that. Yeah. Another thing that upset, a couple reflections or a couple burdens for me, it really, really upset me when I think it was Nixon, President Nixon, pardoned all the draft dodgers that went to Canada. I don't like that. Yeah. Solution, go into Peace Corps for 2 years or stay out of the country. Yeah. Another thing that upset me to this day, Muhammad Ali. Granted, arguably the greatest heavyweight fighter of all times, okay? Don't honor him like a hero. He's a draft dodger. Well, he was a conscientious objector. Wait, let me get this straight now, okay? Because of his religion, he didn't want to fight in the war, but he goes on TV and beats the crap out of people. Yeah. I'm confused. Yeah. Are you?
Well, I think I don't think it's fair to say just because he's an amazing athlete or, anything like that, he shouldn't dodge the draft either. I think when it comes to going to war, I think everyone should be up to getting in there and fighting, because it's not fair to have one guy go and another.
Can't see a couple minutes.
So I don't think it's right to have some, just because you're not, you know, rich or something like that. It doesn't matter. I think everyone should go, or at least think about going. So.
I mean, my faith is very important to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it in the foxhole, by the way. Okay? It's everything to me.
Right.
And I understand people whose faith is important to them. Okay? But I don't understand, go serve in a Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
What's amazing is, kids, that, you know, the vast majority of Americans probably all feel pretty much the same. You know, they salute the flag, they sing God Bless America,
Yeah.
which our present president doesn't do, by the way. They sing God Bless America, they believe it, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. That's the Boy Scout oath, right?
I
was a
been in
Boy Scout
Scouts, so.
50 years ago, and I still remember that. But there's a handful of people who unfortunately rise to positions of power and make decisions and make laws that are contrary what the vast majority of Americans
Yeah.
believe in. Why does that happen?
Not really sure.
Careful who you vote for.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel like when you came back from the war? Like,
I
was it
didn't
hard
watch a
to
news
adjust?
program 20 years. Today, I'll watch the news for a couple minutes if they say that something is coming on the news that they probably can't lie about.
Right.
Some, you know, some personal interest story.
Right.
Another reflection when I came back, people would, you know, here's a newspaper. There's a newspaper sitting there on a bus, you know. Why can't they report about a Boy Scout helping an old lady across the street? It's always some disgusting, horrible, negative thing
Yeah.
that is in the news.
Yeah.
And you find the Boy Scout on the 18th page.
Yeah.
Well, that's what sells news. I said, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
That's not news, that's propaganda. Difference.
Right.
So, and to this day, and it's almost, what, 40 years? Actually, a little more than 40 years now. I don't like the news stations. I missed another little, do you have any other specific question? I had another story from basic, advanced infantry training.
I don't think
Go
we have
ahead.
one.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Anything. We're up for it.
I told you I found it pretty easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind eating crow. One situation. I'm sleeping, and you know, you're really tired, and they wake you up really early, and when you get lay in your bunk, man, you want to sleep. The guy's shaking me. I look up, and it's this little guy who had a master's degree from college, crying. Forget his name. But he said, John, I got to talk to you. Can I please talk to you? And I said, yeah, all right. Let's get out of here. We'll go in the stairway to the barracks. I don't want to wake these guys up, and I don't want them to see this kid crying. He's older than I am, 3 years older than me. Go in there, and there's a little emergency light in there to light up the stairwell so I can see. He's got yellow stains in the front of his boxer trunks, and he's got a brown stain in the back of his boxer trunks because I'm walking behind him, okay? This is a 24-year-old guy. This guy was so broken from the drill sergeants pounding on him constantly. And I said, I'll try to do something about it. There was one particular drill sergeant, young kid, back from Vietnam, okay, combat infantryman's badge, and he thought he was hot stuff. And I went up to him and I said, Sarge, can I talk? And he was with one of his buddies. Can I talk to you for a second? What do you want, John? And I said, got to talk to you about something and everything, you know, and whatever this guy's name was, I forget, you know, John Doe. He woke me up last night, and I don't know if you know it or not, this kid's going to break. And I told him about the urine stains and the crap stains and everything, and I said, look, you know, you got to lay off this kid a little bit because he's going to have a major problem. Yeah. And he started mouthing off, and I said, are you done? Okay, now I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to tell you, lay off the kid, or I will have to do something about it, and don't tell me I'm going to go to whatever the Army's version of jail is, I forget the term for it now. I don't care. Lay off of him. Do you understand me? And back, as I told you, I was back then I was cut. Big arms, you know, the whole 9 yards, and I don't look too friendly when I get PO'd. And this guy fortunately recognized that, and he said, I'll see what I can do. So they laid off this kid.
That's good.
But you have these little crisis stories going on, you know, that happen. For that kid, it was worse for him than me getting wounded. Mentally for that kid. Why is he there? Yeah. Because some politician voted the way that he was told to vote by the people way up top, and we're breaking people here for this stuff. So, funny things happen in combat. We had a kid from Puerto Rico. He's walking point, and there was a python hanging down from a tree limb, hanging over the trail. And he's there, you know, he's kind of, you know, he's a little bit clueless. Yeah. He's there, and he's holding his rifle with a weird style and everything, you know. And he happens to look up like this. He threw his M16 up in the air. He yelled out a scream that was like, you know, some banshee and everything, and go turn around and come running past us. And we all bust out laughing at him, because he had snakes over there all the time. So you learned how to laugh at that kind of stuff and everything, you know. And there, I gave you a picture. I hear another story. We're playing poker. A little bit of, there's no fun over there. You go, you steal some C rations. You go into your hooch, which is a makeshift house, and I use the term house loosely. And you're in there and see, maybe you get a poker game going. Mudrick, the guy that picked the leech out of my rear end, it's his turn. Oh, R&R. Everybody in Vietnam got 5 days R&R. Rest and recuperation, R&R. The married guys went to Hawaii. The single guys went to Bangkok, because they go there and they, you know, do all the single guy stuff and everything. So Mudrick is heading to R&R. Single, young kid, he's like 19 years old. Yeah. And he's keeping his money in the strap around his helmet. You have a metal helmet, and you have this camouflage rag type thing that's on it, and there's the strap, and he's got his money stuffed in the strap, because we're going through streams and stuff, and he gets soaked up to here. And he loses his footing, drops the M60 machine gun in the water, okay, and his helmet flies off, and there goes $250 floating down a river. He starts crying, okay, he's a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
All right, guys, cough it up. And I mean, I got $25 a month cash pay in Vietnam. The other $450 I sent home to my wife. Yeah. The $25 was, you know, was to play poker with, or, you know, I bought negligee for my R&R for my wife from some gook, you know, weirdo stuff like that. So yeah. Everybody coughed up their money, and he went off with a little over $200.
What was like the average age of every?
Great question. I just found this out less than a year ago. The statistics on the ages of who served in Vietnam, the ages of who got wounded, the races of who served, and the race statistics of who got wounded. And you'll be shocked to find out that the statistics are not the way that the media has portrayed it. I'll say that. Look them up yourself.
I actually have a few stats.
Do you?
Here, yeah.
Read them off.
The average ages of these deaths were around only 23 years old.
I was going to say 23.
Yep. Yeah. And their youngest man killed in Vietnam was only 16 years old.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
There
These
was-
are illegal.
There was 5.
Do you have the statistics on education completed?
No, I just have
It's
lots.
much higher than you would think.
Well, over 200 million Vietnamese died in the Vietnam War, of course. So,
Imagine that.
and then over 2 million of our guys.
200 million
Yeah.
wiped out. Cambodia, I mean, theoretically, there wasn't even a war there, and they lost more people. It's genocide. Purposeful.
But there's, I mean, pretty bad stats. There's over 75,000 men were severely disabled. 23,214 of them were 100% disabled. 5,283 of them lost limbs, and 1,081 of them sustained multiple amputations.
What was the total wounded count?
304,000.
See, I thought it was higher than that.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Well,
It's good to have
Anyway,
you.
summary.
sum it up.
You've heard this before, you're going to hear it again. You kids are the future citizens of this country. Try to make sure that the candidates that run for election have character,
Right.
Okay.
and try to figure out who has the character. There's not going to be a lot of them, because people who coach T-ball don't run for politics normally.
Yeah.
The people that run for politics high end are people who, I guess, find it fairly easy to leave their family and their kids. So you don't have a bunch to choose from. Sorry, Cameron. You got to find character in these people somewhere. Dig it out. And don't stand for anything but the truth.
Right.
You know, Martin Luther King, the Bible says the truth shall set you free. Well,
Right.
it's the opposite. If we don't get the truth, we're not going to be free.
Right.
And they're burying it.
Right.
So go get it, kids.
Thank you very much for coming.
It's
It was
been,
very
it's
nice
been
talking
fun.
to you.
My pleasure, my honor. Thanks. God bless.